Hi, everybody. This is Thomas, and we're here with Nannette from Career Services. Nannette, thank you so much for being willing to talk with us today. Talk with me today, I guess.
Well, hello to everyone and to especially to you. Do you prefer Thomas or do you prefer Dr. Thimble?
I usually go by Thomas, so feel free to call
Okay.
me Thomas. That's what I tell my students, so feel free to do that. And
Likewise,
you
Nannette is fine.
and you prefer Nannette. Okay. So what I thought was just starting, if you could just introduce yourself and your role at Career Services and tell us a little bit about Career Services at Wayne, and then I've got some questions for you about job materials. So if you want to introduce yourself first, let's start there.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nannette McCleary. I am a career counselor in the main office, or I should say the Career Services office that services the whole university. So that includes the College of Engineering as well as the Illich School of Business, even though they have their own offices as well. We serve, as I said, we service the whole campus, and we, for lack of a better word, are full service. We do everything from part-time jobs on campus. I do the career planning in which helping people explore. Um, I like to say everything from help me, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up, to I've been doing it for 20 years and don't want to do it anymore, and everything in between. But all the employment services from the on-campus, part-time, on-campus, off-campus, internships, full-time after, along with the resources like Handshake for the career portal, job fairs, programming, as well as outreach to the communities that we serve.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you for that. I've got a list of questions that kind of have come from students over the past couple years or so. Our course, students have to find a job, usually an internship, but sometimes they're full-time paid jobs or part-time jobs that they are actually qualified for, but that are also related to their field and their target profession. And we ask students to create a job letter, a cover letter, and also a resume. Many students already have a resume, but what we try and teach them to do is how do you customize a resume and job letter for a particular position? And so I've got some questions for you, things that have come up, but anything that you can think of as well.
Okay.
One question that we get is how much, what kind of keywords should applicants use in their, I guess, their cover letter if we're talking about keywords, but maybe resume too. Keywords that actually come from the job posting. We could also talk about language that comes from the mission statement of the particular company and organization. How do keywords and language from mission statements, what's their appropriate role in these documents from your perspective?
The keywords are predominantly for the applicant tracking system. Previously to the 90s, we were all paper system. And so everything was geared toward what we call the human eye. When we went digital with our resumes, that means our resumes are getting stored in these digital databases. So the applicant tracking systems, of which that is a phrase that is used that tracks an applicant all the way through from the application to the hiring process and onboarding from there. So, and there is like the top three are Workaday, SAP, and Taleo. Those are the top three that most Fortune 5 companies use. Some of them have newer technology, some of them have lower technology. So some of the things with the keywords, though, you have to think about how do we search? That's why keywords are so important, because keywords are nouns. Whereas with the human eye, it really focuses more on the verbiage because of the visibility of, I should, the visualization that comes from verbs. So the keywords become the critical piece to get through those applicant tracking systems. And it's more difficult than ever to do so today because employers are now using AI, not just their own search criteria, but they're telling AI to tell them which people I should interview, which makes it even that more difficult. So keywords are very important. But keep in mind, when we're talking about keywords, it's not just parroting that I'm talking about. It's really understanding the nature of the issues, challenges, and problems that this position is trying to solve. And so keywords are important because those are likely what's going to be used, but more important is understanding what do those words mean to that company.
You made a
Or that.
really interesting point there. I have not thought about before. So you're saying that machine readers and AIs are kind of zeroing in on nouns, keywords from the posting, but that when a human being finally lays eyes on those documents, they're drawn to those action words, those verbs. And so you need to think
Absolutely.
carefully about both the verbs you're using, your action words, what can you do, but also the nouns from the job postings. That's really interesting. And so I wasn't thinking even about those two different readers. You have the machine and AI readers, but then someone at some point, the person who's interview you or an HR professional, they're going to lay eyes on those documents and well, and they're looking at it slightly differently.
Yes.
That's interesting.
And it is a key thing because keep in mind, it's still a human running the applicant tracking system.
Right.
So they're putting in the parameters. And so part of it is understanding the frame of reference of where they're coming from, because we can't always know what keywords they're going to put in. The job posting only gives us a clue. So that's why I say it's not about parroting what you see in the job posting or the mission statement, but really, targeting and matching up your abilities to that. And that all boils down to the simple phrase, transferable skills.
Great point. Great.
Yeah.
All right, I got an easy one for you. People always ask about length. People get, you and I talked about this a little bit before, a lot of conflicting information. A lot of students, and I think it's a good question, say, I've always been told my job letter has to be no longer than one page, single spaced. My resume cannot be longer than one page. Other people say, no, however long it needs to be, unless it's specifically described in the posting, limit your document. What's a good general rule for the length of the job letter and the resume?
Well, first of all, we have to understand the answer to most resume questions is this. It depends, right? So it depends first on what the individual is looking to do, right? Back in the day, it was one page or nothing, right? And then what was happening is most college graduates, that's all they could do. But as people are, returning to school or growing and developing and getting wonderful experiences while they're in school, it's not unheard of for someone to have 2 full pages. And that's where we went next, was it's either 1 page or 2, nothing in between. But you know what? Because of the digitalness of resumes and because of those applicant tracking systems, the digital eye doesn't care. The digital eye takes all the fancy stuff and strips it away anyway, divides it into 4 categories and, makes it plain Jane as much as you can. Yes, it gets switched back. It's pretty image for the visual eye for the PDF. But knowing that, it doesn't matter. Length doesn't matter. Keep in mind, by the time the human eye gets look at it, they will only scroll in as much that what they see, what they're looking for. A lot of times I do tell people, especially we'll say entry level, new talent, internships, you're looking at 1 page for your convenience. If you have only this much on your second page, look to see how you can condense that, because we want to be ecologically friendly, right? And if you have extra wide margins, so you're taking up this much space and you have a lot of white space on your resume and you have this much on your second page, then perhaps you could get it down to 1 page. Many times the defaults of like the word processing documents, or worse yet, the templates, they put too much space in between the lines, and single spaced is fine. The digital eye doesn't care. The human eye can read it just fine, unless you're old like me. But then,
yes, right.
right. That becomes, so those are different things. That becomes strategy and formatting. But to be honest with you, formatting is not what's going to make or break a resume. Only 2 things will make or break a resume. Number 1 is the content that you put into it. And that's important to remember, because Um, the resume is the primary document. So most
Yes.
people want to do a one size fits all resume, and then they're going to try to adapt with their cover letter. It doesn't work that way. If it isn't in your resume, I mean, they could see you could sell the world in your cover letter. They get to the resume and they don't see what you were claiming in your cover in your that's a disconnect, right?
Gotcha.
Uh, right. So the primary document is the resume. If you're you have to customize to the position today because we are a customized society. So you customize the resume first. By the time you're getting to the cover letter, one page or even less is sufficient for that. Think about it as a bridge. On one side is the job posting, on the other side is the resume. Your cover letter is only the bridge between them. So you're not repeating what's on your resume. And you're just drawing those parallels between the two as a marketing tool to get them to look at your resume.
I like that image. I like that image of a bridge. You said there's another thing that can
Make or
disqualify.
break
Yeah.
context. And
Oh, okay.
this is where most people go wrong on their resume. They do a nice historical list of what they've done, but they don't filter. See, I call it the two filter system. First, an individual has to filter through them. In other words, no individual can be summed up on one page. I think Shirley MacLaine, your students won't know who that she is. They can look her up though. She's got 7 books about herself. If 7 books are not enough to describe Shirley MacLaine, one page is not enough to describe any individual, even a 3-month-old baby. But so we have to filter through all our accomplishments. And believe me, I have some people on that I don't have. They're worried about what I don't have because they're
Right.
so but comparing themselves to the Facebook world. But anyway, so they have to filter through everything that they have and put what they feel is relevant. The second filter, however, is the only other opinion that matters about the resume is someone who's in a position to hire them. Good for them. There's lots of people who are out there ready to hire them. Unfortunate for them, each and every one of them is going to have an expectation of what they want to see on the resume. So when I'm working with people, I really focus on let's have a good representation, not just of what you've done, but where you want to go. Because I don't care how beautiful your resume is. If it's a cheesy pepperoni pizza flyer being distributed in a vegetarian neighborhood, it's not going to fly.
Right. Right.
That's my analogy for marketability on a
I like
resume.
that. I like that. I like that. Um, Another question, this is maybe a language question as well. We see a lot of students, particularly in their first drafts of these documents, more so the job letter than the resume, who would want to use what I would say is a kind of non-neutral tone or emotionally heightened language. So you'll see folks use words like passion. I have a passion for project management. Or the word love. I would love to sit down and talk more about my skills. Um, in general, as a person who looks at these documents and grades these documents, I encourage students to use a more neutral emotional tone. Um, yes, you want to demonstrate that you are intellectually committed to something, that you enjoy a particular activity, but in general, I try and get folks to sort of dial down the emotional language. Sometimes I think maybe I overreact to that language, where I'm, projecting my own biases onto that. How do you think about that kind of tone, and what kind of advice do you give to folks when you see that kind of language?
Well, when you're doing a job search, the documents are in a business language tone. That is first and foremost. I understand where your students are trying to go with it, because one of the things that happens is that passion sells today. Passion sells. Employers want someone wholly engaged in that organization. So what they're trying to do is because we even see that in job descriptions. We're looking for energetic go-getters, right? We see that. So again, they're trying to mirror that on their documents. The problem with that is character is very subjective and kind of meaningless in of itself. Let me give you an example. If I sat there and said, Thomas, I'm energetic, I'm knowledgeable, I'm personable, I'm thoughtful, I'm kind. At what point did I lose your students? Tell me to come back, okay? Because if you didn't like listening to my litany of characteristics, maybe you believed some of it, maybe you didn't. It's subjective. And what happens is if it's not supportable me talking about it, it's even less supportable on a piece of paper, right? So here's the challenge. How do you demonstrate character without being overly emotive or meaningless on your resume? You do it through the transferable skills. This is the power of transferable skills and the visualability. So I'll often ask people, why do verbs matter? Verbs represent your skills for number one. So the action verbs represent your skills. So that's power number one. But also they provide visibility. So I'll give you an example. I imagine, many of you out there listen to podcasts or audiobooks. There might be a few of you out there less, or just even somebody who tells a really good story. When they do, I'm sure, like most of us, you get a little movie that runs in your head and you can visualize it happening. So here's the challenge. I want you to think about, where does that come from? Let's think that through, because nouns only give you the players. If I say the word elephant, how many of you just visualized an elephant? Because adjectives set the scene. Elephant in a pink tutu. But notice we don't have any movement until we add the verb. Dancing elephant in a pink tutu. So the power of the verb on your resume, for particularly the human eye, is to allow the reader, or we were talking about storytelling, it allows you to tell a story and allows the reader to visualize you doing these activities. And that's where the real power comes from. So for example, like, I'll give you an example of a great characteristic. Most of us will agree honesty is a great characteristic to have. But what does honesty look like?
Right.
We could only think in metaphors of honesty. But what if I put on my resume that I return lost merchandise to customers? Right? See, to me, marketability, this is where ChatGTP can't help you, because to me, marketability is not the words you use, it's the message underneath. And to me, that's where the real power in a resume comes, and is how well you are representing your brand and whatever that is.
I like that. So even if you could say, I was recently recognized at work or recently recognized in a class for something, that again demonstrates whether that's honesty or integrity or whatever it is, that's much better than saying I'm honest, right? Or that,
Right.
or I'm conscientious. No, I finished my project 3 days in advance, or whatever it is, the
How you
specific.
physically demonstrated it in
Yeah.
a concrete way, and that makes it more visual.
Excellent. I have one last question for you, and that's just about, other than the things that we've talked about, or in addition, what common mistakes do you see new job applicants make, just that you'd like people to be thinking about as they go into this process? And they could be things about those documents, or they could be the thing, any common mistakes that you see that you'd like to put out there.
Well, it's how about there's so many of them, but I'll start with ineffective strategies. There's a common misnomer out there that it's a numbers game. You just have to keep applying. One size does not fit all on a resume. It just doesn't. You can click, and it can get frustrating real quick. But keep in mind, 80% of jobs are not advertised. So you have to be able to represent yourself well in the advertised job market, but that's not the whole of where all the opportunity is. 80% of jobs are found through networking. And networking, the major error most people make in networking is they're asking the wrong question. When they
Ah,
go up to somebody and the first thing that's out of their mouth is, do you know anybody who's hiring?
right.
It shuts down the conversation. So I want your students to really think about this.
Yeah.
Where do jobs come from?
Yes. What's a better question to ask? Now I'm totally interested. What's a better
Okay,
question to ask in that situation?
okay. So here's the thing is if you understand that all jobs are created from unmet needs, simply put, whether that's a real need like food, shelter, or healthcare, or the manufactured need of the latest, greatest cell phone.
Yeah.
If all jobs are created from unmet need looks like the issues, challenges, or problems, ICPs for short, that an individual organization, multinational, whatever, is dealing with. Your conversation then becomes around the issues, challenges, and problems you want to take on because we know when you start talking on that same level, oh, you're having that. How did you solve that? And again, this is things they do every day. How are you handling that assignment for Dr. Timble?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So again, these are things that they already know how to do. Again, I think their lack of confidence in that professional realm leads them to less than effective strategies.
That is super helpful. I was starting about these documents. I was kind of hoping that we would kind of get to the more strategy, interviewing, networking stuff. So thank you so much for taking us there. That's exactly where I wanted. That's a great place for us to end.
Okay,
Um,
keep in mind, I'm willing to come back at any time to answer questions.
I'll ask you one more. Nannette, I'm a student. I've never had an interaction with Career Services, but I think it's time. What's the first thing I should do to get engaged with Career Services and what you all provide?
If they haven't already done so, they need to activate their handshake account, which is easily done through Career Services. There's a little tab, click handshake. They'll log in with their Wayne State Access ID and password. They've already got the account. All they have to do is activate it. From
Fantastic.
there, they can look at jobs. They can set up appointments. They can attend events. We're already starting to plan job fairs and professional engagement things for next semester. So,
Sounds great.
and
Hey,
there's still a number of employer events that are going on all the way up through the holidays.
really? Okay, great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Take care. Have a great week and a better weekend and a fabulous holiday.
Thanks very much.